So this is my second year university short film, and this one definitely had a much more focused and much more motivated sort of journey to it, because we'd all been through the stress of the first year. I was working with a different group this time because we tended to just get paired up with random people, which to be fair is pretty accurate to how filmmaking goes. If you're not in charge, you just get paired up with whoever the producer put you up with. So I was working with a different team, but we had a lot more ambition. This one was definitely not my idea. There was a woman who we were working with in the group who had recently become vegetarian, and she decided to do a sort of expose, or at least a faux expose video on the kind of ugliness of factory farming and how even free-range farming can sometimes be a bit of a lie. I was all for this because I've been pescatarian since I was about 9 years old, so I understood a lot of the lifestyle, and I thought it was something that we could do. The difficulty, of course, was that obviously there was no way we were going to be able to actually get into factory farming sites to film the ugliness of the whole ordeal, so we had to resort to stock footage to that, which we were all a bit disappointed with because we wanted to do something a lot more, you know, genuine. But with the short time frame we had, I mean, we can only do these things in like 3 months, maybe even less depending on how you look at it. So we just had to kind of cut corners. But I was very ambitious in finding places we could film, because there were a lot of free range markets in Brighton, and I went back to my hometown and filmed at some local butcher shops and such. And yeah, I think I did a good job, all intensive purposes told. It definitely got very stressful near the end because we noticed we were getting near to the end of things, and we realized that we had so much that hadn't been done yet, and we had to do the voiceover like 5 times before we got it right. So this was one where I was more so shouldering the weight of the project rather than having it all on my shoulders to carry everything. But I definitely think I stepped up at the end to try and help get things done. More so I was the problem solver rather than the team leader, but that's something I often do anyway. But in any case, here's the film.
As humans, many of us have an idealized view of where the food we eat comes from. With traditional farming methods increasingly being replaced with relentless commercial production, the idyllic barnyard scenes of the past are often a far cry from the truth. The human and non-human relationship that exists between people and animals is highly convoluted and largely circumstantial. With almost 50% of UK households owning pets, it poses the question, why do we view some animals as a source of food and others as a form of companionship? Have we been misled into believing that some animals are more emotional than others, or do we consciously make the decision to disregard any information that could pose a threat to widely accepted norms? In 2009, the Farm Animal Welfare Council published a report outlining the 5 freedoms, a set of guidelines to minimise suffering and promote the good welfare of farm animals. You don't have to dig very deep to discover that these basic guidelines are more often than not completely neglected within factory farming practices. With the governing welfare body falling short of their responsibilities, it becomes the responsibility of the consumer to engage with the issues surrounding food production.
Generally, they're pretty standard. I think it's something that you would come to expect from the sort of living conditions that you'd want the animals that you're eventually going to eat to be in. I mean, for example, the first one here is freedom from hunger and thirst. You wouldn't expect the animals that you eat to be deprived of food and water. I think if people knew and understood what was going on with the suffering of these animals, then people would potentially avoid the cheap and the morally questionable processed meat. The responsibility for the awareness of good animal welfare lies majority with the supermarkets. They should be the ones that are making you aware of of the ways in which meat is produced, but I don't think it's solely with the supermarket. I think some responsibility has to lie with the consumer.
I've been a vegetarian for 11 years now, and it's because I really like animals, and it's for moral reasons really that it makes me sad that they're dying for us. The 5 freedoms, I don't think that any of those are present in factory farming, because they're, like for chickens and stuff, they're in cages or they're in really cramped conditions, and they're sort of force-fed to make them fatter, aren't they? And they kind of concentrate on churning out to get the products as opposed to looking after the creatures that are making the product. So I don't think they really care about doing any of those things. It's really sad that we think that just because we're like the dominant species that we have the right to do this to other animals.
Animals within factory farms are often genetically altered to grow faster and fatter and to produce more milk or eggs than they naturally would. Painful practices such as the removal of beaks is also common practice to prevent animals expressing their normal behaviour.
Well, you've got caged hens, which have got a number 3 at the beginning. Now with the cage side, there's new rules and regulations that are coming to Europe, and what that means is that they've got these new enriched cages, and the birds got more space to move around in. It's a personal preference really. I mean, I only eat free range, and you know, to me, when you look at the price difference, it's not a lot really. The one thing that belongs to me is my body, and I like to look after it, so it's make sure I only have the best.
I grew up on a farm, my husband grew up on a farm, and I think, you know, since I was young, there's a lot more information out there. The UK farming is fantastic. You know, there's very stringent welfare standards. You know, we're lucky here, we have the space and the ground where we can actually leave our animals out all year round. Some farms, they can't. You know, they have to, out of a welfare point of view, rather than being kind of knee deep in mud all winter, they have to be indoors. It's farming trying to respond to actually the shopper going in and only wanting to pay £1 for 4 pints of milk. And it's very, very difficult to compete with that and keep standards high. You know, and the welfare of the animals, it costs money.
The relationship between humans and animals is ancient. Humans have been eating meat throughout evolution, and there is no refuting that a healthy digestive system is well equipped to handle it. However, much of the meat we eat today comes from animals that have been pumped with antibiotics and hormones to increase growth rate, unlike the meat our ancestors ate.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to go and visit my website, which has more for you to see and more information about me. Or if you want to check out more of what I'm like as a person, check out my other YouTube channel where I do comedy shows and reviews in a very comedic style. So, I'll see you there. Bye.